Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser and I am your host. Today is Friday, October 22nd, 2021, and this is episode number 212 of the show. Today we're going to do what's called a deeper talk episode, and for those of you who may be newer listeners, what this consists of is using the Deeper Talk deck, which is a product by the Best Self Company, and it is an expansion of the original Icebreaker deck, which is a deck of cards, 150 of them, that was originally designed for one-on-one and group conversations, just to prompt people to get to talking about anything and everything, in real life. So right off the box, these cards come in a cool little box. I'll just read to you what this says. It's a tool for creating lasting and more impactful connections. Developing strong friendships or relationships requires vulnerability, but sometimes it's hard to know how to share the deep parts of ourselves. It's so easy to develop surface level relationships with surface level conversations, but those kinds of relationships can feel somewhat empty. The Icebreaker Deeper Talk deck is a tool for diving deep into meaningful conversations. Use it regularly to explore the deep parts of yourself and others. And in addition to the daily devotionals that I have used and have been using for the past few months for fodder for discussion for the show, I've also been using these Deeper Talk deck, because I don't own the original Icebreaker deck, but I do own this Deeper Talk. No, I'm sorry, I do own the original Icebreaker deck, but I prefer this Deeper Talk deck. The questions are a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more thought-provoking, and this is actually what I tried to do in yesterday's episode, and what I did with yesterday's episode. However, for those of you who tune in regularly and listened to the show yesterday, you'll see that it was a little bit different. I had some technical difficulties upon arrival at the tree farm. Hopefully we can avoid that today and maintain the integrity of the recording, which was lost yesterday. So the way that this works is the deck of 150 cards is broken down into 6 different categories. Each Deeper Talk episode, I pull a card at random, and that is the topic for the show. And that is also what I'm about to do right now as I approach the end of the driveway and actually prepare to hit the road to the day job. So let's pull a card at random. I immediately go and look to the cards and colors that appear to have been pulled from the least. Oh boy. It's the exposed. What was missing from your childhood? Sometimes these categories, this one in particular, has exposed some thoughts and dialogue that was, made me feel a little vulnerable, especially when putting it out there in a form of a podcast like this. But that's what life is all about, feeling vulnerable in order to, putting ourselves outside of our comfort zone in order to grow. So again, the question, what was missing from your childhood? I'm blessed to say that very very little was missing from my childhood. I was one of the people that grew up in an upper middle class suburb. My father grew up in an upper middle class suburb as well. My mom grew up dirt poor. So I think there was always this idea in my father's mind that I don't even want to begin to speculate on anything my parents thought, because the reality is I don't know what anyone thinks. And I'm incredibly reluctant to talk about what was missing from my childhood, because when I look back, it was wonderful. We had everything that we needed. We had much of what we wanted. But I will, in looking back, the first thing that comes to mind with this question is money. While it appeared as though we had lots of it, I think it was kind of the fallacy of golden handcuffs, if you will. And we didn't really learn that much about it. Yes, when we were young, we did chores for money. We weren't just given an allowance, but we had to earn our money. So we learned about that. We had bank accounts as children, and we would make deposits every now and then. But by the time I got to college, and my college experience was unique in its own right, in the fact that I attended 3 different schools over the course of 5 years, dropping out of the first 2, losing a scholarship to the first one, and ultimately graduating with a 2-year degree after all of that. But by the time I got to university number 2, I was signing up for credit cards left and right. And by the time I had moved out to Colorado and had 23 years of life experience under my belt, I also had more thousands of dollars of debt than I had years of life. And a real quick story, I guess at that time I was very stressed and wasn't taking care of myself either, and at some point in the morning on my way to work, I had a seizure behind the wheel of my car, and I drove into a cement truck on the side of the highway, on the median, in a construction zone. And I had to get cut out of the car. The Subaru saved my life. And I tried to make it, you know what I mean? I tried to hang on, and I tried to stay out west after that, but I was broken. Emotionally, financially. Physically, it wasn't too bad. I digress. The point of this is, shortly after that accident, at the age of 23, 24. I declared bankruptcy. And that was a very difficult and challenging time, but I felt like I had no other option. And I was struggling with a lot at that time. And even with that experience, 10 years later, by the time I'm in California, 10 years ago, rather, a little over 10 years ago, I'm in the same boat, deep in debt, working out of it, at least at this point, working out of it, only to have another accident, end up in a coma, and have my plans back to Ohio be accelerated. So I get back here and I repeat the process a third time, going deep into debt, chasing other people's dreams. All of this while, you know, trying to save for the homestead that I was building with my parents. Well, they were building it. I was simply contributing financially. Didn't have much say in the process. And which is strange, because even though, you know, sometimes we're consulted for our opinions, but then our opinions are dismissed and things get, there's some conflicts that can take place, and part of life is learning how to deal with all these conflicts, and part of life is also learning how to navigate around the challenges that you're experiencing, potentially as a result of things that you never learned, things that were missing from your childhood. And one of the things that was missing from my childhood was the way of thinking about money that Dave Ramsey talks about, especially through Financial Peace University. And a lot of times he refers to it as common sense thinking, the way that grandma would have done. Save what you earn, spend what you save, don't spend what you don't have. Debt is cancer. Simple concepts like this. And I had to go through a burnout in my career, a burnout in my personal life, go deep into debt 3 times. The third time, finally realizing that enough was enough, finally realizing that bankruptcy wasn't the answer, and finally realizing that the proverbial lifestyle change that I had been talking about, thinking about for the previous 6, 7, 8 years was getting old. It was time to take action. The past few years has consisted of years where action has been taken. The debt has been eliminated, and we are now saving. And part of the lifestyle change consists of not having and making some sacrifices. I was just thinking this morning about how nice it would be to finish up some of the trim work and hang some final doors and do some work this winter around the homestead office. It's been in a holding pattern since I moved in several years ago because I was getting out of debt. So we're still working towards that. We're still moving forward. Baby step 3 to 6 months of living expenses. In my case, 6, because I've got a chronic neurological condition, and I think it's wise to, as my mom always said growing up, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And that's it. So what was missing from my childhood was very little, other than some knowledge that, if I'm referencing Dave Ramsey specifically, it simply wasn't around at that time. So guys, I'm going to shut it down for today as I pull in so I don't experience the same challenges that we experienced yesterday. And I hope you have a great day. Happy Friday, and we'll catch up with you on the podcast on Monday.